Hello and welcome to The Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 2012 series, Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a comic that brings together the normal Marvel Universe Peter Parker Spider-Man with series writer Brian Michael Bendis' own Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man. It began shortly after the start of the run of the first Miles Morales comic, and featured both of his original creators, both writer Bendis and artist Sara Pichelli, returning to this comic that expands on the original. I can't help with Miles but make comparisons to Spider-Man 2099, who is also half Hispanic and also an alternate Spider-Man from a more futuristic seeming universe, and also created to be, in many ways, sort of an opposite to the regular Spider-Man. And so I will make another one here, since Spidey 2099 also met regular Spidey in a comic called Spider-Man 2099 Meets Spider-Man. There, writer Peter David and artist Rick Leonardi attempted to legitimize their take on the Spider character by attracting regular Spider-Man fans into their universe, and having Peter give his blessing to his alternate friend. And that is exactly what Bendis and Pichelli attempt to do with this book, so let's take a look at how they hope to accomplish that and take this away. The comic opens with a double-page spread. Yep. This is definitely a Bendis and Pichelli comic. But we're not starting on Miles. Instead, we're focusing right now on Peter, as he goes through a normal day in the life of. He swings through the city, makes some jokes, and stops a crime. Typical Spider stuff. Then, a giant purple energy pulse lights up the night sky, and he thinks to himself, maybe I should look into that. What he finds is an abandoned warehouse. Well, mostly abandoned. Looks like Mysterio has been squatting in it, building himself a giant purple light show. Next stop, Vegas. Mysterio's none too happy with Spidey trying to get a sneak preview of his new stage show and attacks him. Spidey puts him down as easily as ever, but then gets distracted by the pretty lights. Geez, your name is Spider-Man, not Mothman. The distraction leads to Mysterio accidentally shooting his device, and an explosion of light warps Spidey and drops him in another double-page spread. This is actually a really cool use of double-page spreads though, because this is the only other one in this issue, and it's done to intentionally reflect the first one. The first one is nighttime on our New York City, a regular New York City. This one is a daytime on a different New York City, the ultimate New York City. They're similar, but different. The most notable differences are the inclusion of thedailybugle.com and the Ultimate's home base, the Triskelion. Convinced that this is one of Mysterio's tricks, Spidey returns to the warehouse, crashing through the window for some reason, only to find out it's now some lady's apartment. Awkward. Fleeing that scene, he soon finds himself coming across Miles Morales, the ultimate Spider-Man. The two duke it out, with Pete's years of experience giving him an early advantage, even getting Miles' mask off to learn that he's definitely not just another Peter Parker. Miles takes the day though with his OP instant win, the Venom Blast, sending it through Spider-Man's web cushion. You know, I'm not too sure why it didn't hurt Miles too here. Can he not be hurt by his own Venom sting? But this causes both of them to fall, and Miles, as the only one conscious, grabs Peter's arm and uses his web shooters to keep them both from splatting on the pavement. Those who saw my Ultimate Comic Spider-Man review will recall that Miles didn't have his own web shooters until Aunt May, Gwen Stacy, and Mary Jane passed the torch and gave him Peter's, along with the web fluid formula that Genki had to figure out. When Pete wakes up, he's inside the Triskelion, but, like, how? Did Miles carry him over here? While I guess he's strong enough, how'd he get across the water? Logistics aside, I do enjoy Peter's reaction at meeting a Nick Fury that doesn't look like David Hasselhoff, but instead a very different famous actor. Fury believes Pete's story completely, because when Bendis writes Fury, he pretty much takes everyone at face value. Also, we only have 5 issues, so not enough time for doubt. Mysterio, using a robot avatar that he sends in his place, attacks the two Spider-Men there. But older Spidey is used to these illusions, and quickly defeats the phony Stro. No. Mystery phony. Don't like it? I'll keep working on it. While S.H.I.E.L.D. cleans up their spider mess, Peter decides to try and figure out if everything that's happening is really real. So he runs off to look into parts of his life Mysterio doesn't know about. He finds a bodega in place of his apartment and uses the clerk's tablet to look himself up on the internet, not liking what he finds. Next he visits his Aunt May's house in Queens, and I'm sorry, I cannot keep track. I honestly have no idea if regular universe Aunt May was supposed to be alive or dead at this point, but he seems pretty emotional about seeing her. Also, this universe's May and Gwen's Peter is dead, And at first they're not very happy at what seems to be an insensitive bastard showing up on their doorstep dressed as their lost loved one. Miles shows up to explain that he's the real deal, even though at this point they shouldn't really have known Miles any better, but whatever. Before long, they're hanging out in the attic like teenagers, chatting about the differences between their worlds. Like a reference to the somewhat infamous comic where the first Ultimate Spider-Man and Wolverine switched brains. Or how Gwen's living with May because, as she says, my dad died and my mom ran out on me and Peter and May took me in. Oh, and also I died and came back as Carnage, but it's okay, I got better. Also, we don't have time for that story because again, 5 issues. Also, we needed all this space on this page for, background art things. Yeah. There's also some uncomfortable questions about what adult Gwen is up to. Fury shows up, which apparently means it's time to go. I know because they tell us. Twice. They return to the Triskelion, where they learn Mysterio has been posting angry rants on YouTube. Man, what a showboat. What kind of D-bag posts videos on YouTube, am I right, Peter? They figure out his location based on a building that Miles recognizes, which is the point I learned that this is all they were apparently waiting for. I mean, okay, I get that Miles is our hero and we need him to do something useful in this comic, but come on. You're telling me there's a room full of super spies who do this kind of shit for a living, and not one of them was like, hey, do you recognize any of the buildings? Or do you think we could run some kind of scan with our super fancy hologram technology to identify any of the buildings? No? Nothing? Well, let's pray some 13-year-old who spends a lot of time in Brooklyn happens to show up or we're really screwed. Anyway, where was I? So they all go in an epic shot to face down Mysterio, who's busy talking himself out of just leaving Spidey trapped in the other universe and decides he needs to see him suffering. So he activates another faux stereo, faux stereo, walking us through the entire activation process again, even though we just saw it like 3 issues ago and it basically adds nothing to the story. Good thing we left out all those plot points and character conversations. We need to make more room for this bit, because this is the good shit right here. This is the good shit. It is interrupted by Spidey somehow perfectly aiming through the weird purple universe light to grab Mysterio with some webbing and pull him through into the Ultimate Universe, instantly defeating him. Wow, that was kinda anticlimactic. Oh, then he breaks free, because of course he does, and hits the heroes with some scarecrow gas that makes them see their worst fears. Guess Peter's fear means normal May is still alive. Also, Iron Man's vision is basically the one he gets in the Avengers Age of Ultron movie, which, fun fact, came out 3 years after this comic. Miles breaks out of the fear gas first and knocks Fishbowl Head back through the portal, stopping to take a moment to appreciate the new universe, same as the old universe, before taking them both back through the portal again. They decide they're gonna keep Mysterio in the Ultimate Universe, which Peter is cool with even though like, whoa, big philosophical moral implications right here. I mean, in effect, you're killing him because you're removing him from the world. But it's worse than that because he's still alive and trapped somewhere unknown with no way to go home. But we're gonna be cool with it because he knows your secret identity now? Okay. As Pete leaves, he gives some parting Spider advice to Miles, including making a reference to that time Aunt May and Doc Ock got married. Ha! Bet you didn't expect me to bring that up again, but I did. The comic ends with some gratuitous spider abs, ladies, and Peter doing a quick search for a Miles Morales in his universe. And he finds... what? What did you find? What was it? Was it a sequel? Yeah, you did, which means it's time for the breakdown. It's difficult to read this comic now and not see how it's clearly the basis for Into the Spider-Verse, and not think about how much better the movie did it. But it really is unfair to compare the two, especially when its faults and virtues are all its own. Pichelli's art is, as always, pretty great, especially with Justin Ponsor also returning to provide his amazing color work. I also really enjoy much of the character interactions, especially Pete getting to meet these other versions of the people in his life. But the biggest weakness is the plot, which is barely there, and is mostly there just to get these character moments to happen. How about explaining how a third stringer like Mysterio got his hands on interdimensional technology in the first place? Technology that even Ultimate Tony Stark himself says is above him. Or for that matter, which Mysterio this even is. It seems to be taken for granted that he's regular Mysterio, but the way he's talking when he first meets Pete makes it sound like he's from the world where Peter's already dead. Also, I haven't actually read the second story yet, but I can't imagine it's much faster paced than this one, so I'm betting it would have been possible to tack on a 6th issue and cover both stories in one miniseries, if they had been willing to make better use of space and pacing. So for the half of this comic we do get, I'll go ahead and give it a series recommendation level of medium. It's by no means a bad comic, but it's not exactly stunning either, so I don't feel like you're really missing out on much by skipping it. Thanks everybody for watching! Week 2 of Spider-Man month done and dusted. Make sure to like and subscribe to make sure you're here for the rest of my Spidey updates and beyond. Hope to see you then, right here in the Comic Cave.